From the Cronkite studios in downtown Phoenix, this is Cronkite News.
Thousands flocked to the nation's capital to catch a glimpse of Pope Francis in a historic visit. Cronkite News talks to Arizonans there to welcome their holy leader.
And one community in Arizona still sits below the poverty line, but comes together through their culture.
And later, a new Tempe business is looking to bring a touch of heaven, one fry at a time.
Cronkite News starts now.
Good evening and welcome to Cronkite News. I'm Yahaira Jaquez.
And I'm Jake Aiden. Thanks for joining us.
Pope Francis has found plenty of common ground today with President Barack Obama in his first full day in Washington. The Pope made clear that he wouldn't sidestep issues that have deeply divided Americans. The Pope addressed the nation in a welcoming ceremony on the White House lawn that included more than 1,100 attendees. He discussed issues such as climate change, marriage, Cuba, and immigration.
I'm deeply grateful for your welcome in the name of the all Americans. As the son of an immigrant family, I'm happy to be a guest in this country, which was largely built by such families.
Thousands crowded the streets around the White House today to catch a glimpse of Pope Francis after his meeting with the president. And Cronkite News found several Arizonans in those crowds celebrating the day. Cronkite News reporter Elizabeth Blackburn joins us live outside our Washington, D.C. bureau. Elizabeth?
It was a beautiful sunny day in Washington, and I was on the parade route outside the White House, where the mood matched the weather. There were long-lined security guards, buttons, and flags for the Pope's visit to the White House, and Phoenix resident Elva Bernal was there to witness it.
Something I never imagined in my life to see. It's a great feeling to see that there is still unity among people. We should always be united, like we are here in this event.
Crowds were gathered outside of the White House to listen to the Pope's speech on jumbotrons, but Tucson native Margarita Bernal was one of the lucky ones with a ticket for the South Lawn.
When he came in, it was like a rock star because you can just see the crowds rushing toward him, and he was driving his little Fiat. And you're like, what's going on? And people are like cheering and cheering. And you just see this little tiny black car drive through and pull up to the White House, and you see the president get him out, and you're like, oh my goodness, that's the Pope.
On the parade route, people listened as Pope Francis talked about issues like the disadvantaged, the family, and more. And Bernal says he came here to teach us.
And I think it's a significant thing. He's speaking to all of us at some level, whether we believe in climate change, whether that's the issue, whether it's immigration, whether it's compassion. He's here to give us a message. So I think anyone who hears his speech should take it to heart.
But former Tucson resident Donald Walters, who was along the parade route, said the Pope's visit is more than politics.
I think it's an opportunity for all Americans to reflect upon the role of faith in their lives and to understand that the Pope's message of service to others is a key in terms of elevating everyone in our country.
Arizona visitors, the experience was both historical and personal.
It was a very moving, half an hour. It was just amazing. It wasn't very long, but the pomp, the circumstance, and his words and the president's words were fairly amazing.
And his final words brought the biggest cheer.
We look forward to these days, dear country. God bless America.
The Pope celebrated a Mass this afternoon where he made California missionary Una Pericera a saint. Tomorrow, he will make a historic first ever address to Congress, and Cronkite News will be there. Live in Washington, Elizabeth Blackburn, Cronkite News.
Arizona Governor Doug Ducey took part in the White House ceremonies welcoming the Pope today, following a personal invite from President Obama. In a statement, Ducey wrote, welcoming Pope Francis to the United States is a rare opportunity, and it's one I won't forget. As both an American and a Catholic, I was deeply humbled to be a small part of the Pope's historic visit, and I look forward to attending his much anticipated congressional address on Thursday.
Many Americans are seeing the Pope for the first time today in Washington, D.C., but one Xavier College preparatory student got to see the Pope before he made his way to the U.S. Madeline Whistle, a senior at Xavier, traveled to Ecuador this past summer. Part of her trip was being able to see Pope Francis in person. Whistle traveled with a group of classmates as part of a 15-day trip around the country to see the sights and sounds. Whistle says seeing the Pope was one of the highlights of the trip.
Just complete wonder and amazement, and just feeling so like together with everyone seeing him. We all stayed overnight and camped out, and just being there with all these people for such a long amount of time and getting to finally see him and just feeling really united with everyone else there.
Whistle said she could see how much the Pope cares. She hopes everyone in Washington, D.C. can see that he is trying to change the world for the better.
Back in 1987, then Pope John Paul II made a trip here to the Valley. Here's some archive footage of that visit from the Phoenix Diocese. After a motorcade down Central Avenue to St. Mary's Basilica, Pope John Paul II addressed a crowd of about 150,000 people. He also visited the pediatric ward at St. Joseph's Hospital, then celebrated Mass for about 78,000 people at ASU Sun Devil Stadium. He is the only pope to have ever visited Arizona. Our Cronkite News digital team made a timeline of papal visits to the U.S. over the last 50 years. You can click through the historic photos, starting with the visit from Pope Paul VI in 1965 and following the many visits from Pope John Paul II over the decades. You can find this story map at cronkitenews.azpbs.org.
With Pope Francis bringing a message of helping the poor, our investigative team is looking into impoverished areas here in Arizona. Cronkite News reporter Sonny Scott takes an in-depth look at one of the communities in the valley coping with chronic poverty.
According to the National Center for Children in Poverty, about 400,000 children in Arizona live in poverty. That's about 26% of all kids. But in the small town of Guadalupe, nearly half of them live below the poverty line. And our investigation found it's not only about being poor, but also finding a way out. From the luxury landscape of the Arizona Grand Resort and its finely landscaped golf course, you can see the town of Guadalupe, one of the poorest communities in Arizona. Its houses run down, some made out of adobe, plywood, or just plain straw siding. For more than a century, Guadalupe has been the homestead for the Yaqui tribe and other Hispanics. Nearly all of them are persistently poor. David Verdugo has been in Guadalupe all his life and lives with his grandmother. Poverty is all he knows.
I just thought it was normal. Until I started growing up and realizing, oh, we're poor.
Verdugo is part of a youth group program to connect kids back to their culture and makes them less likely to get involved with drugs or alcohol. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, 31% of the estimated 6,000 people in Guadalupe are living below the poverty line.
Poverty, though, is so vicious that it doesn't allow people sometimes to get out from under its thumb. And people sometimes get so worn down they don't even see the possibilities of how to escape poverty.
Garcia says half of Arizonans living below the poverty line are Latino, and many won't achieve a high school or college education. Having a higher education is a difficult challenge here in Guadalupe. 53.9% of the people have a high school education, but only 5.3% have a bachelor's degree or higher.
And Arizona is going to drop to a second or third tier state, and it could be on a permanent basis if we don't correct it. Education is the great equalizer when you come out of poverty.
Marina Gonzalez started an after-school program because parents wanted educational tutoring.
Over half of the kids in Guadalupe will not graduate high school, and our goal is to make sure every kid in our program graduates.
She says it's difficult to keep students in school and keep them focused.
Education is one big problem. A lot of our kids are below grade level.
At Frank Elementary, the only school in the town, nearly 90% of the students qualify for free or reduced lunch, and their first language is Spanish.
If they don't close the gap early, by the time they get to high school, they're very frustrated, and they tend to drop out.
Anita Soto helps out at a local youth group program that tells a different story about this isolated community.
But you got to see beyond the dilapidated houses, beyond the little stores. You got to see the in-depth, our heart. Look at our heart.
She says the town stays connected through their culture and faith.
Guadalupe is blessed. And the definition of blessed is empowered to prosper.
Verdugo wants to go to college and become a football player, but caring for his grandmother is his full-time job now.
She's everything. She's my inspiration.
Verdugo believes one day soon he will leave Guadalupe and start a life of his own.
You guys just seem like so happy. I want to be like that, experience that kind of happy.
Unemployment and reliance on welfare also creates strain financially in areas like Guadalupe, since the state is hard-pressed to pay for new programs. That's leading some millennials growing up in poverty to look at life differently and the possibility of moving away from places like Guadalupe and getting better jobs. With the investigative team, I'm Sonny Scott, Cronkite News.
Now an update on the I-10 shooting case. Prosecutors have formally charged a suspect in some of the freeway shootings that have kept Valley drivers on edge. The suspect, Leslie Allen Merritt, is charged with 16 counts, including aggravated assault, unlawful discharge of a weapon, disorderly conduct, endangerment, and carrying out a drive-by shooting. Merritt has been tied to 4 of the 11 shootings based on ballistic tests. Police say that there may be copycats, so the investigation remains open.
There's concern over the voter information pamphlets for 2 schools' elections. Voters are allowed to share their opinion on the bond and override, but some arguments are confusing and possibly even misleading. The Maricopa County Attorney's Office is looking into the situation. In the Higley override proposal pamphlet, one person tells voters to wake up, rails against the Republican legislature, and claims that charter schools and homeschoolers are, quote, stealing all of our money. A search of public records doesn't turn up anyone with the name and spelling of the person listed. In the Gilbert bond election, another voter opinion calls out, quote, crazy GOP people, and says we still need to support the school district no matter the district's track record. It is simply signed Miss Jessica. County Attorney Bill Montgomery says the statements could confuse voters.
At best, you could say that it was satire on arguments that appeared to be in favor of the override, but reflected points that are usually raised in opposition.
Unfortunately, the Maricopa County Education Service Agency, which oversees the creation and distribution of the pamphlets, says it's too late to make any changes. They will be mailed out for the November 3rd election.
Yelp has often given people insight on restaurants and retail businesses.
But now Yelp is entering a new area to review. Coming up on Cronkite News, Yelp will now publish official health data as part of the online reviews for Arizona clinics and hospitals.
Plus, a new spot in Tempe is giving French fries a new meaning.
Tap into the art scene from coast to coast. Join the Art Beat Nation, a weekly series where you'll experience a rich cultural tapestry of art stories from across America. Meet artists, writers, composers, and performers setting the pulse of the arts in America now. Join us for a brand new episode of Art Beat Nation, Sunday at 5 on 8HD.
Yelp can help people find reviews on restaurants, auto repair shops, and hotels. But if you had the chance to use Yelp when it comes to finding a healthcare provider or hospital, would you? Cronkite News reporter Lauren Michaels took a look at how online comments are evolving when it comes to your healthcare.
Yelp, a star review site and mobile app, has partnered up with an investigative journalism company called ProPublica to make medical data easily accessible to the public.
It's the first time such information is available at the touch of one's fingertips. Patients are now able to see detailed information about hospitals, nursing homes, and clinics on Yelp. Many feel this partnership is positive.
It's a good thing anytime you can take publicly available information but make it more accessible and usable to the public.
And a movement.
This is definitely a trend for the government being more transparent, and then, the public, I think, demanding more information at their fingertips.
ProPublica is helping by providing health metrics as well as information from the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services for about 250,000 hospitals and medical facilities across the U.S. In addition to the Yelp reviews, the app will now provide information such as doctor communication, quiet rooms, wait times, patient survival rates, and fines paid by nursing homes.
As of now, Arizona ranks low in providing such detailed information. Dignity Health declined to comment on this topic, but Banner Health wrote in a statement that they believe consumers make better choices when they're well informed. Medicare.gov data updates every quarter, so we can expect to see more information about our medical centers very soon. In the Broadcast Center, I'm Lauren Michaels, Cronkite News.
A new type of business model is expanding into the Valley food scene. One example is French Fry Heaven, a new franchise that moved in last month. Cronkite News reporter Devin Connolly takes us to see how the fast casual restaurant is vying and frying for success.
Opening a restaurant at a university would seem like a recipe for success. But the Paseo Exchange on ASU's campus, 8 different businesses have come and gone over the past 5 years, according to landlords' reports.
21 Buffalo Chicken.
The newest arrival, French Fry Heaven, is throwing out the cookbook and starting from scratch. The CEO is ASU alum Scott Nelowit. The entrepreneur has opened 17 restaurants since 2011 and has now claimed a vacant space in Tempe. He believes his business is here to stay.
This Vista del Sol area, I think we're a difference maker for them because there's been a lot of upheaval here. One of the key things that some of the groups and some of the areas that we've gone into and figured out about us is that we draw traffic.
Franchisee Amit Kapoor explains the strategy that sets them apart from other businesses.
They invest a lot and reinvest a lot into the franchise, which I'm really happy about. And I think the food just speaks for itself. There's nothing really I can say until people really come in and try it, because I think once people try it, like they're all just enamored by it.
According to the building manager, Heaven is one of 5 companies who have replaced businesses in Paseo Exchange since 2013. The last tenant in the space lasted less than 1 year.
With the amount of businesses opening, relocating, and closing in this area, we asked French Fry Heaven if they are up for the challenge.
You've got to keep reminding people that you're here and getting out there. But at the end of the day, the number one thing is we've got to deliver a great product.
Which Nelowit hopes will be enough to ensure success in a center where others have struggled. In Tempe, Devin Conley, Cronkite News.
The restaurant is now open for business. It's located at 681 East Apache Boulevard. Universities across America are moving towards sustainable energy.
Coming up next on Cronkite News, a Valley company is teaming up with NAU to get more heat from the sun.
And the debate for new uranium mines surrounding the Grand Canyon continues, putting business interests up against environmentalists and Native American tribes.
See this flower garden? There used to be a car sitting there, a car I didn't use and didn't want. So I donated it to public television, and they took care of everything. In addition to supporting my favorite programs, I earned a tax deduction. Turn something you don't need into something you really want. Contact the Vehicle Donation Program.
8 is Arizona PBS, a service of Arizona State University.
Arizona officials continue to support a federal court battle that would allow new uranium mining operations on 1 million acres surrounding the Grand Canyon. Attorney General Mark Brnovich supports business interests pushing for more mining. In 2012, the federal government banned new mines to protect the natural, cultural, and social resources in the Grand Canyon watershed. Brnovich says that this is an example of federal overreach, and new mines could bring many jobs to Arizona. However, environmental advocates and tribal officials say that adding new mines could damage the land. Uranium powers nuclear reactors and remains a key component for technological and medical devices. In 2014, the U.S. District Court of Appeals upheld the order to prevent new mines. Currently, the case is being heard by federal courts by the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals.
Northern Arizona University is built as the first university to install a solar-powered heating system, and it's following a national trend towards university sustainability. Cronkite News reporter Ebony Johnson took a closer look at the university's plan. Ebony?
Northern Arizona University is trading natural gas-fueled heat with a solar thermal technology. It's the first to be used on a university campus.
It's called the Solar Thermal Hot Air Heating System, a long name for what creator Michael Corden calls a simple heating process.
Bring in air in the backside bottom. We bring it in through this special manifold we've designed to make the air flow evenly across the entire surface of this panel. It goes out through a similar design manifold and comes out the back.
The new technology is helping the Northern Arizona University Lumberjacks make their mark, honored by Arizona Forward as the most innovative school for energy and technology.
I want to be able to ride the momentum and continue doing awesome projects like this that really get NAU's name out there within the sustainability world.
Jessica Laser is the chair of Green Fund, the group that funded the solar heating project. The goal? To reduce the use of natural gases on campus.
Just by using solar energy, they offset our natural gas use and reduce our emissions by 3 metric tons of CO2 a year.
This wall-mounted 6-panel system stands 8 feet tall and 24 feet wide on the south side of this NAU warehouse, with the sole purpose to heat this building 6 months out of the year, reducing the university's carbon footprint.
But the benefit may reach beyond the university. Cordan believes these thermal panels can help the public in a more efficient way.
We are very interested in preventing people from freezing to death in their homes. So if we can take this very effective solar technology to them with some assistance, we'd be just thrilled to do some good in our own backyard.
Solar Thermix hopes donations may eventually fund a plan to put these units on tribal lands to help the elderly keep warm in the colder high country winters.
One panel costs about $1,000, but it can heat 1,000 square feet. That's why Cordan says this new technology will pay itself off in time. In the Broadcast Center, Ebony Johnson, Cronkite News.
Coming up on Cronkite News, old video games getting a new young audience. Video games of the past are making a strong comeback and sending prices skyrocketing.
Fridays, it's at Cronkite News, your social sharing connection where you choose the news. Facebook likes and shares, tweets, retweets, and favorites. YouTube views and subscriptions. We're watching you watch us. From our digital home at cronkitenews.azpbs.org to your television, web browser, or mobile device. Find us on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Then join us for at Cronkite News, our weekly refresh, each Friday at 5 on Arizona PBS.
Tickets are available now for one of the most anticipated luncheon events of the year. Join industry leaders from the worlds of media, politics, business, and education as we honor award-winning news anchor and late-night host Charlie Rose, this year's recipient of the Cronkite Award for Excellence in Journalism. The event takes place at the Phoenix Downtown Sheraton on Monday, October 19th at 11:30 a.m. For tickets, visit azpbs.org/Rose or call 602-496-4539.
Hi, I'm Judy Woodruff, co-anchor of the PBS NewsHour. Preparing the next generation of journalists has never been more important than it is now. With its groundbreaking partnership with Arizona PBS, the Walter Cronkite School of Journalism and Mass Communication at ASU is revolutionizing journalism education to provide students with a real opportunity to work and learn under the supervision of veteran journalists, producers, directors, and editors on newscasts, investigative stories, and documentary productions. The Cronkite School and Arizona PBS, reinventing journalism education in the digital age.
If you were a kid in the 80s or 90s, you can probably remember playing Nintendo games on your NES or Nintendo 64. Well, just because you sold your games or your console doesn't mean they're not still out there and being played. I visited a couple video game stores in the Valley to find out where these games are now and just how much they're worth.
Ian is reliving what he calls the glory days.
We should just go for the bounce ball. All the other games that I play, like Super Nintendo and N64, it's definitely just, you know, it brings back all the memories and stuff from playing with all my buddies, coming over to my house after school.
The 23-year-old is at the younger end of a particular niche of gamers who prefer the classics.
Nostalgia is huge, as people are like, oh, I remember playing that. I'm like, I remember getting the whistles in Super Mario Bros. 3.
To start all over. They don't mind the clunky controllers, pixel graphics, or even the high price tags.
For $380, you can play this Nintendo game. Bubble Bobble Part 2 made its debut in 1993. Its cost then $70.
A recent purchase I just made, it was just for a single cartridge. It cost me around $150 just for that single cartridge.
So who's driving the comeback?
A guy said a pretty funny line to me once. He said that he feels that he's still a kid, but with money now. So he's trying to get all his games back.
And he's right. Research analysts that watch the game industry say baby boomers coming of age are causing the increase in demand.
Games that were only a few bucks to $5 to $15 are now $20, $30, $40, $50 games easy. And people pick them up and they're willing to pay the money.
But for fanatics like Ian,
dang, the DI.
the price tag will never matter.
It's really special to me. It's just like it's right here.
Research analyst Michael Pachter told us the nostalgic culture will keep the games around because as long as someone who played those games is still alive, they'll want to play them again.
Cronkite News is proud to be the news division of Arizona PBS. Here's what's next on Arizona Horizon and PBS NewsHour.
Coming up after Cronkite News, it's Arizona Horizon. Corporation Commissioner Bob Burns will join us in studio to discuss issues facing the commission, and we'll learn how Arizona is playing a role in hosting Syrian refugees.
I'm Gwen Eiffel on the next NewsHour, a conversation with the House chaplain as Pope Francis addresses a joint session of Congress. That's Wednesday on the PBS NewsHour.
That's it for Cronkite News tonight. Thanks for joining us.
For top Arizona stories anytime, go to cronkitenews.azpbs.org.